This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Roger Stone Show. Here we talk politics, news, history, and we also bring you groundbreaking interviews. If you want the inside skinny on American politics or commentary about matters culinary, we talk about food as well. And it is Mother's Day. For all the mothers out there, for all those who miss their mothers, for all those who still have their mothers, cherish your mother, hold her tight, cherish every single minute. I lost my mother, Gloria Rose Corbostone, 12 years ago. She was an indomitable spirit, abandoned by her father with my grandmother having to go to work. She raised 4 brothers, cleaned, cooked, and disciplined them. She was tough as nails. I miss her so much, I can barely explain it. If you saw The Sopranos and you remember Tony's mother, that was my mother. Tough, suspicious, opinionated, an incredibly hard worker. She worked at the Norwalk Hospital as a nurse's aide. She also, later in my life, she wrote a neighborhood newspaper column. She was an amazing cook, most of her dishes either being Italian or Hungarian, as she was both from an Italian father and a Hungarian grandmother, my grandmother, Mezos Kardos. She was also a huge supporter of Donald Trump. She unfortunately passed in June of 2016 before she could finally see what she had cheered for all those years, Donald Trump's election in 2016. But she did proudly dance with Donald Trump at my wedding. It was among her proudest and most excited moments. Folks, if your mom is still with you, cherish her. So I'm trying to figure out what to make of the new Pope. He is a registered Republican. He's thought to be a moderate within the church. Many liberals have cheered the election of Pope Leo, hoping that it continues a progressive lurch to the left by the Catholic Church. Most of their enthusiasm seems to come from past criticisms by the Pope when he was Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost of President Trump and J.D. Vance, the vice president. Also criticism of their tough policies on illegal immigrants. But the good news is the Pope does seem to share the traditional moral issues of the church on abortion, traditional marriage, and a male-only priesthood, like his predecessor, Francis, of whom I was very critical because I believe that when Francis agreed to let the Chinese Communist Party essentially have veto power over who could be a bishop or a priest in China, well, I think that the accommodation with evil is evil. And therefore I wanted a pope who spoke out against Marxism, who spoke out against radical Islam. What is good, though, is that the Pope does continue to take the high ground on the moral issues. See, the Pope can talk at cathedra. That's from the throne of Peter. That's when he speaks for the church and with the word of God. And then there are his pastoral musings, which candidly can be quite political. For example, Francis criticized private property and free enterprise, when there's nothing in the Bible that would substantiate that. But here is the good news. The Pope's brother, Leo's brother, turns out to be a Trump supporter. Lou Provost, brother of Pope Leo, formerly, of course, Robert Provost of the Cardinal for Chicago, turns out to be a Trump supporter. After the second assassination attempt, he posted online, they tried to take out President Trump again. How does this happen? He goes on to say, I wonder who is so afraid of Trump becoming president again that they want him dead. He must know and have some real dirt on some people. Just makes one imagine what they're trying to find when they raided his home. That is Lou Provost, the Pope's brother. Interestingly, it is also interesting that he cheered for and defended J.D. Vance online. He was harshly critical of Tim Walz. So while the Pope may be a registered Republican, and perhaps he's a moderate Bush Republican, the Pope's brother, Lou Provost, is clearly MAGA. Here's the one I like the most. He actually reposted a meme that pointed out that while Richard Nixon only erased a 13-minute tape, Hillary Clinton bitwashed 33,000 emails that were under subpoena. So he's actually red-pilled on Nixon and Watergate. This is, I think, incredible news. Meanwhile, the order by President Donald Trump to release all of the documents pertaining to the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy Sr. has now been completed with the additional 50,000 documents downloaded. I have begun reading through them. I looked through the first 10,000, and frankly, I am still not persuaded of the official narrative, that being that Sirhan shot and killed Robert Kennedy. Sirhan was always in front of Kennedy. He got off 8 shots. All 8 of them are accounted for. He was shooting wildly as if for a diversion. But Thomas Noguchi, who was the coroner of L.A. County, quite respected nationally, says in his autopsy that Senator Kennedy shot from the rear at point-blank range at the left rear of his skull, meaning that the shooter had to be behind Kennedy, could not possibly have been Sirhan. Sirhan, while incarcerated, demonstrates elements of some kind of mind control, writing over and over again on a pad, Kennedy must die, and so on. So it is, I think, suspicious. I've just finished my book on the Reagan assassination. The government has never issued an official report on Reagan's attempted assassination in the first year of his presidency. We're working with J.C. Hawkins. I have written a book. We just finished the 13th chapter on the Reagan assassination, but it is as interesting as what really happened. I think perhaps my next book will be on the Kennedy assassination. By the way, Robert F. Kennedy shares this view that the killer shot from behind, and that it is Thane Cesar, a Filipino, Thane Cesar, a Filipino. He agrees with that view. It's torn their family apart, where Kennedy has consistently insisted that Sirhan is not the guilty party. So perhaps that will be my next book. My first book, a New York Times bestseller on the Kennedy assassination, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. My second book on assassination coming up. It's entitled Bushwhacked, The Real Story of the Attempted Assassination of Ronald Reagan. And perhaps next up will be a book on the murder of Robert F. Kennedy. It is, to me, fascinating that none of these documents seem to illuminate what has really gone on. So you can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, but I prefer what Gore Vidal said. We are not conspiracy theorists. We are conspiracy realists. We simply lead where the evidence takes us. You're tuned into The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. When we come back, India and Pakistan in a ceasefire, but will it hold? Colonel Douglas McGregor joins us to talk about that and the folly of war in Iran. So whatever you do, please don't go away. And then a little later, we're going to handicap the New Jersey governor's race with Mike Crispy. We're going to look at both the Republicans and the Democrats. Mike Crispy, the host of Mike Crispy Unafraid. He joins us coming up as well. And then the One Taste trial. Is this a sex call or an FBI setup? All on the Roger Stone Show, coming up next.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Late last week, reported to you the implications of the action by the U.S. Senate, where Senator Thom Tillis, a rhino from North Carolina, unilaterally blocked President Donald Trump's nomination of Ed Martin to be the U.S. Attorney for D.C., an incredibly powerful post with a crucial role in President Trump's First America agenda. It is in D.C., of course, where the federal courts seek to stymie overreaching their authority to stop the overwhelming mandate of the American people in the last election. Therefore, this is a vitally important district, judicial area, and the president withdrew the name of Ed Martin, but then immediately unilaterally appointed him Associate Deputy Director, Attorney General, as well as a pardon attorney, and put him in charge of a weaponization working group. This means, of course, that the Russian collusion hoax and those who were deeply involved in that illegal, I would argue even treasonous activity, including Barack Obama, who probably has immunity under the recent Supreme Court decision, but Vice President Joe Biden, who does not, FBI Director Jim Comey, who does not, National Security Director Susan Rice, who does not, CIA Director John Brennan. These are the folks who brought you the Russian collusion hoax, along with Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI, and others. Will they finally see justice? Well, it may be up to Ed Martin to find out. Then there needs to be an examination of the so-called Ukrainian impeachment hoax. This was cooked up by Adam Schiff, members of his staff, and the Vindman brothers, two twin brothers, members of the national security staff, who theoretically worked for the Trump administration, essentially fabricating conversations that never took place in a second attempt to not only remove Donald Trump, but more importantly, to hide what the Bidens, particularly Hunter Biden, had really been doing in Ukraine with Burisma. So in order to hide their own crimes, they sought to accuse Donald Trump of a crime because he was asking about the Biden's crimes. Legitimate questions, in my view. So the other great piece of news here is, moving very quickly, President Trump decided in the place of Ed Martin to appoint Judge Jeanine Pirro, my colleague at 77 WABC Radio, a woman who's had an extraordinary career. She is tough as nails. She's an experienced prosecutor, having served as a prosecutor in Westchester County. She made the domestic violence crimes and crimes against children were things that she specialized in prosecuting, ferreting out and prosecuting it. She is at her point where she is not only tough as nails and extraordinarily capable, but at this point in her career, she has no ambitions other than to serve her country, and she certainly doesn't need anyone's approval. She is precisely the right person. So for those on the left who may be high-fiving the fact that Ed Martin was not confirmed by the Senate, I think you make a gigantic mistake. Will we finally see justice in the Russian collusion hoax? As someone whose life was turned upside down, I certainly hope so. But this is not about revenge, or it's not about retaliation. It is about recalibrating the criminal justice system so that the scales of justice are equal, so that we don't have a two-tier justice system where Hillary Clinton, for example, can, as I said earlier, destroy 33 million emails with a hammer and bit bleach, and pay no price for it. while Donald Trump, they cook up crimes such as possessing classified documents that, as a former president, he has every right to possess, and invented crime that did not exist, or falsely claiming him for illegal acts on January 6th. When you take down through censorship the audios and videos of him urging his supporters to march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol, also telling them to stand down when some go unwisely into the building. This frustrates me no end because I still see it on X. Any claim that I knew in advance about, was involved in any way with, condoned any illegal act on January 6th is categorically false, and there is no email, no text message, no encrypted message, no video to prove otherwise, or witness to prove otherwise, because it is one of those false claims that the fake news media and their crazed partisans on the left engage in. Ed Martin will be great in this new position, and for those who are impatient about Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, these are enormous agencies. They're very difficult to get your hands around. We're going to talk later about the One Taste case. It's not clear to me that the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York clearly understands what's going on beneath him. The Eastern District of New York understands what he's doing beneath him in that case, for example. So these are like turning around an ocean liner, and at this point, they have a giant bureaucracy that is working against them at every turn. I still have absolute confidence in both Bondi and Patel, knowing both of them personally and knowing their commitment to justice and to the country. So for those who are impatient, I understand your impatience. I, too, would like to see people prosecuted for the egregious crimes that turned my own life upside down, but I'm also a patient man. Meanwhile, we'll be back to talk a little bit about pizza, but we're also going to visit with Colonel Douglas Macgregor to tell us what the prospects are for the ceasefire to hold between India and Pakistan, and whether we are inalterably headed to war in Iran, and how sensible that may be. Colonel Douglas Macgregor joins us. He is, in my mind, one of the great geopolitical and military thinkers, and when you hear his take on Iran, I heard an amazing video that he made that induced me to invite him to join us today. We'll be right back on The Roger Stone Show with Colonel Douglas Macgregor, investigative reporter Frank Parlato on the One Taste trial, and more.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Joining me now, Colonel Douglas Macgregor. He is a decorated combat veteran, an author of 5 books, a PhD, and a defense and foreign policy consultant. He is also a geopolitical and military thinker, the one that I respect the most. He has written 5 books. His 5th book, Margin of Victory, 5 Battles That Changed the Face of Modern War, is spellbinding. And I'm not a military historian, but I can appreciate his excellent work. But more importantly, I watched a video recently which Colonel Macgregor explained the folly of war with Iran, and I welcome him into the show. Colonel, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Roger.
So let's get right to it, because it looks to me, although I am a supporter of Israel, I do not want Israel to drag this nation into war. They seem to be constantly agitating for an attack on Iran. I recognize how difficult negotiations must be, but you had a very hard-hitting 8-minute video. I can't even begin to summarize it, but what are the follies of this idea that war with Iran could resolve our problems?
Well, you know, the first thing when we say our problems, I think we have to focus on Israel. One of the reasons that I have always opposed this all-out war with Iran is that I'm afraid Israel might not survive the experience. People don't seem to understand Israel is a relatively small country. It doesn't have much strategic depth. And though we are good friends with Israel, we can do many things for them. Ultimately, if they're going to survive in the Middle East, if they're going to live there, they're going to have some people in the region that they can depend upon and work with. I think war with Iran would utterly destroy any possibility of Israel building good relations with any of its neighbors. I mean, right now, Iran is very close with Egypt. The Egyptians have threatened to intervene to stop the inevitable solution, so to say, in Gaza that Mr. Netanyahu is now threatening. Egypt is being told that they will have the backing of the Jordanians, and the Jordanians, of course, have tried very, very hard to assist and support the Israelis insofar as maintaining regional stability. Syria, of course, is in turmoil, and the Turks are finding it increasingly difficult to cooperate and get along with the Israelis, given what the Israelis say they want in terms of control of southern Lebanon and Syria. In other words, Israel is, I think, bitten off a great deal more than it can actually chew, and of course they're turning to us and they want us to help them. But for us to become involved in the war is probably even worse than Israel's determination to fight it, because we would destabilize not just the region, but have a horrible impact on the global economy, not the least of which is the oil and natural gas market, which would undoubtedly be destroyed in Iran. The notion that we can go to war with any country and then pick out pieces and parts that we will destroy and somehow or another survive this enterprise with no damage reaching us is something that Israel can't bet on. And I'm afraid right now that the most important thing we can do is to find some way out of this impasse. And let's face it, I don't think Donald Trump is getting much assistance out of Mr. Netanyahu in that effort.
No, to say the least. I mean, I have confirmed that Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles all argued persuasively against a strike against Iran, while there are other voices, presumably that of recently departed National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who's now been given the consolation prize, in my view, of UN ambassador. Because Trump never wants to fire anybody, nor does he want to give the left a scalp. But it is. I also notice, however, Colonel McGregor, very slight differences in the statements of the president, the vice president, and his negotiator as to what level of nuclear activity by the Iranians would be acceptable.
Yeah, you know, that's a hard one to determine right now. One thing is clear. President Trump has now stated publicly that he would tolerate a nuclear program in Saudi Arabia without first demanding that Saudi Arabia recognize the state of Israel as a legitimate nation state. That's a dramatic departure from the past, and one that, quite frankly, surprises me. But on the other hand, Iran is another matter. Iran is much greater power than Saudi Arabia. And Iran seems to be willing to bend over backwards to a point. But on the other hand, the Iranians are also saying, how do we know if we sign a new agreement that this agreement will last more than an election cycle? And that's not an unreasonable statement. We right now seem to be flipping back and forth like a teenager on TikTok with various positions. I mean, you and I listened to President Trump speak very defiantly during the debates when he was running for president, saying Russia did not start with Ukraine. Ukraine is at fault, but we need a war and we need to find a way to end it as quickly as possible. If I'm president, I will do that. Well, he's tried, but he's moved in so many different directions as a result, I think, of very many people giving him lousy advice, that right now he has no chance whatsoever of resolving the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. That's going to end when the Russians decide to end it.
Sadly, I agree with you. This photo of these fools, Macron and Zelensky and Keir Starmer, the German Chancellor, the Polish Prime Minister, huddled around a table talking about a ceasefire first and then a termination of the war. I think they're I think that they are wildly optimistic. It's also true in Iran. I think the Iranians, in all honesty, Colonel, I think they're running out the clock. They want this UN resolution to expire. They can never give up their weapons. When we unfreeze their assets after the takedown of the sanctions, which you argued quite persuasively weren't that effective as I had initially thought, they still use that money to finance terrorism rather than to help their people. How viable do you see the Iranian resistance on the ground, the MEK?
Well, I think the Iranian resistance, you're talking about the people who want to overthrow Iran, they're irrelevant. Correct. I think you've got tremendous support in Iran for Shiites. And if you look at where the Iranians have invested their money, it's been to protect Shiites. This notion of being a terrorist state, I think, is very misleading. I think you're talking about the Shiites in Lebanon, the Shiites down in Yemen, the Shiites in Qatar, the Shiites in the Emirates and elsewhere. People don't understand the split between the Sunni and the Shiite communities. And the sad part is that historically, the Shiites were not enemies by any stretch of the imagination of the Jewish people. If you were going to pick a state in the region that could cooperate with the Israelis long term, it's absolutely Iran, strangely enough. And that's something that Sam Huntington said when he was teaching at Harvard. Everybody who knows anything about Iran knows this is a very sophisticated and advanced society. They would like to do business with Israel. Israel, I think, has picked the wrong enemy, to be blunt, and I've said that to them whenever I've been in that country. But it hasn't made any difference. And I've had several people try to explain it to me. I've never bought the explanation. I think the two states could live very well together. And I don't think it's reasonable anymore for the Israelis to enjoy this monopoly of nuclear power and expect everyone in the region to bend the knee to them. I think the opposite is happening. I think what we see now, the possibility that the Saudis will have a nuclear capability, I don't think that's been right.
I think we may have lost the Colonel there. When we return, I'm going to ask Colonel McGregor about the Iran-Pakistan ceasefire, whether he thinks it will hold, and also, if we were to strike Iran, what would the Communist Chinese, their patrons, do? When we come back on The Roger Stone Show.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. We're joined by retired U.S. Army Colonel Douglas McGregor. He is a decorated combat veteran, former top advisor to the Secretary of Defense. You find him at Our Country, Our Choice, OurCountryOurChoice.com, OurCountryOurChoice.com. I urge you to subscribe there for some of the most incisive analysis of both world politics and national security issues, global affairs. We were talking about the folly of war against Iran. The Chinese and the Iran clearly have a patron-state relationship. What would the Chinese likely do in the attack in the event of an attack on Iran by the United States and Israel, Colonel McGregor?
China would long support Iran against us, and we would inevitably find ourselves in a direct confrontation with the armed forces of both of those states. And that's, of course, a worst-case outcome, but it's also the most likely, and it's something for which we're completely unprepared.
Yeah, it seems to me that it greatly misunderstands the dangers. It seems to me that the Chinese would act aggressively. This comes also on the heels of this groundbreaking news that evidently with the help of the United States, we have a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Now, it's interesting that both the Indian Prime Minister, I guess, denies that this was negotiated with the assistance of the United States, says it was done bilaterally, but I know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the President We're on the phone with both world leaders of both countries, and representatives of both countries. This ceasefire appears to be holding. What is your analysis, sir?
First of all, I don't think that our intervention made much difference. I know that this is an opportunity that President Trump wants to take to score a win for the foreign policy team. But truthfully, I think these two states recognize the futility of fighting further. The other thing is that we've been getting news here in the United States about the imminent destruction of India, when in reality, the Pakistanis have taken the brunt of the damage. I think the Pakistanis have had enough. This is not going to settle the basic problems between the two states, but I think they'll avoid an all-out war which neither of them want. And, Roger, there's something else. I was listening to you and talking about the criticality of gold as we move into these uncertain times. And one of the things that we haven't really talked about is a constraint on what the president can actually do right now, and that is the fragility of our economy. We frankly are in a position today where we can't take in enough tax dollars to finance our government. And we cannot in the future do what we have been doing for years. One of the things that we hoped many of us that voted for President Trump he would do is recognize the criticality of not spending more, but spending less. We really need some cuts in the budget. We need to cut defense in particular by about 50%. That's another reason we don't need a war right now, for which we're not ready in any case. Nobody wants to do that in Washington, but the truth is we have to do that if we're going to avoid total collapse in this country.
The irony, of course, is that whether you like him or not, Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest men in the country, has kind of shown you the way. He as I said earlier, uncovered not millions, not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars of waste, fraud, and outright corruption. The Republicans have to step up, and they have to get very serious. We always give lip service to being the party of fiscal responsibility, but sorry, George W. Bush spent more than any Democrat before him. We talk a good game, but we don't really deliver, and it is essential for this economy to succeed. Yes, I support the president's use of tariffs as a cudgel to try to force our trading partners into a fairer and more equitable trade deal. I get that. We certainly need the tax cuts renewed. Anybody who doesn't support renewing the tax cuts in January is de facto therefore the largest single tax increase in American history. And by the way, the tax cuts are not just for the wealthy. They are across the board, as Kennedy's tax cuts were, as Reagan's tax cuts were, and federal revenues have gone up every time we have cut taxes across the board. The reason we have inflation and the reason we have a massive deficit is because we spend too much, not that because we tax too little. Trump understands that, but he must get all three legs of that stool put together to have the kind of economy that allows him to go into a midterm election with any level of confidence.
Well, I think that's true. There's also something else that needs to be understood, and I thought he understood this well when he ran, and that is that you have to disengage from the crises and conflicts overseas. We don't need to be involved in these things. We don't need to go to war with anybody at this point, no matter how much we may not like them. This is a time for us to retrench. That means come home and deal with the problems here. We've begun to deal with the border and begun to deal with deportations, but there's still no strategy or plan for any of it. And that's where the president really needs to focus. Every president that deported millions and millions of people from this country, and Herbert Hoover was the first, he deported 9 million, FDR 3.5 million, Truman 2.1 million, and Eisenhower 1.3 million. And when they did it, they turned to an organization that you and I know well. It's called the U.S. Army. That's how you deport. You get it organized. You put a general in command. You give him the resources. You have a legal team that sorts out how it needs to be done. And that's how it has to happen. We've got an estimated 50 million illegals in this country. Now, finally, we've talked about self-deportation. Thank goodness. And there are ways to do that. In fact, you can tell people if you'll leave legally and you tell us who you were and you didn't commit any crimes here, we'll let you take your money with you. And at some point, we'll consider you for reentry. But if you don't, we're going to take all your belongings. We're going to take anything you've earned here. You're going to be treated like a criminal and deported forcibly. We need to get down to the brass tacks, figure out how this is going to be done. But right now, through our legal entry points on the borders, those customs officers, too many of them, are simply bribed to allow human drug trafficking to pass through the legal border points. We shut down most of what comes across, what intervenes between the legal ports of entry, but the rest of it is still ongoing. But there's too much money that these drug cartels have at their disposal to buy too many policemen, too many administrators, too many officials. It's a terrible situation, and we've got to deal with that. I think that's much more important than anything happening overseas, Roger.
This is where you and I, Tucker Carlson, Ron Paul, his father before him, agree. I think it is time to focus on America first. We're listening, of course, to Colonel Douglas Macgregor. Please go to OurCountryOurChoice.com. Subscribe there. Our Country, Our Choice. Always refreshing and straight from the shoulder commentary from Colonel Douglas Macgregor, one of the great geopolitical and military thinkers of our time. I recently read a book written in 2007. And I came across 2 pages about the clear thinking of Douglas Macgregor, who has been consistent in his advocacy for military reforms and to rethink our military and foreign policy strategy. Thank you so much for joining us. You're tuned in to the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back with investigative reporter Frank Parlato with the latest on the One Taste trial.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show. Right now in the Eastern District of New York, there's a federal trial going on against the founder of One Taste, a wellness company, Nicole Dadone, and one of her executives, Rachel Cherwitz, that has brought a lot of public scrutiny. Publications as diverse as Vanity Fair, Revolver, the UK Daily Mail, and Upstate Art Voice have been harshly critical of this prosecution. The government seeks to position this as some kind of sex cult, but then we learned that federal prosecutors actually colluded with executives and producers at Netflix to create a documentary that became the rationale for the indictment of these 2 women who are on trial in New York. But here to break down this complicated story is Frank Parlato Jr. He's an investigative reporter, the founder and, the publisher of Art Voice, the Upstate Lively Arts outlet. Frank, thanks for joining us on the Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. Glad to be here.
So this is complicated. For those who've never heard of One Taste, what exactly is it?
One Taste is an educational company founded in San Francisco, California. And its goal was to, and is to, educate people on human sexuality and also in thriving and advancing in life.
But reading about it, this is more like, I would say, like yoga or meditation. I mean, this has to do with a higher consciousness. There's nothing overtly sexual about this, but the government tries to paint a very different picture. What drew people to One Taste?
Well, there was a component of it. I think maybe its principal practice that attracted many people was a meditation practice that they have named orgasmic meditation, or OM. I'm really kind of surprised, having read about this case and things we have learned about it, that it's going to trial. It's interesting that Dadone and this woman, Rachel Cherwitz, they are charged with
conspiracy to commit, what was it, conspiracy, help me here.
Forced labor.
Yes, conspiracy for forced labor, correct. As opposed to constricting somebody to forced labor itself. That seems kind of concocted in itself. Were people being forced to stay in this practice, or could they voluntarily leave?
The situation is unique because there never was a federal prosecution based only on forced labor conspiracy. That is to say, they conspired to commit forced labor, but the government couldn't find evidence or proof that they actually forced a single person to labor. So they're charged, these two women, with conspiring over a period of 12 years to get people to labor under the threat of serious harm, but they were unsuccessful. So only the conspiracy charge is charged in the indictment.
So I saw Matt Gaetz, former congressman, has a show on OAN. He was criticizing the FBI and this trial, saying this was another example of a weaponized judiciary and extraordinary overreach, and in his case, outright corruption by the FBI. What has been the FBI's role in this entire sordid tale?
Well, I think ultimately the very noble and expert prosecutor Kash Patel will ultimately have to look at this case, and a man named Elliot McGinnis, FBI Special Agent Elliot McGinnis, who is the lead agent in this case. He, I think, it will be found was guilty of evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, perjury, and suborning perjury. And one of the things that they did was that McGinnis collaborated with a woman named Aries Blank to fabricate evidence. And the evidence was created initially for a Netflix documentary. And McGinnis and Blank came together and put this Netflix-produced fiction, and they put it into evidence as if it was real evidence, a real journal. They got caught. Aries Blank was kicked off the case, but the stubborn prosecutors continued with the case anyway.
So who are the other witnesses?
It's a motley group of former disgruntled employees and students. One case had about 32,000 people take the class over the years, and a couple hundred employees in the government got a half a dozen or maybe 10 former students and employees who are willing to say that they were brainwashed.
How much of the story will the jury in the end actually hear? How much will the judge let in? Sounds to me like this FBI agent will have a very hard time under cross-examination.
Well, the government, he won't be cross-examined. The government refused to call him, but the defense rather is calling McGinnis. They had to go through a lot of hurdles to get permission to call McGinnis because the government knew he was unable to testify truthfully. I don't know if he's ever testified truthfully in his life, but he tampered with evidence here. He used his personal email instead of his FBI official email. He got caught. He hid evidence, and of course, as I said, he fabricated evidence. So the defense is going to call him, and he may just take the Fifth Amendment.
I thought it was extraordinary when the plaintiffs here moved for dismissal of the charges against them. No fewer than 20 FBI agents showed up in court in some kind of show of force, which tells me the government knows they have an extraordinarily weak case. This isn't about justice. This is about optics, power, control. This is something I have never actually seen previously. At least one member of Congress has written to the head of the FBI saying that he thinks there are extraordinary abuses of power here by the FBI and by federal prosecutors, and asking them to look at the case. We have a new U.S. attorney there, and it is clear, in my opinion, this case should have been dismissed from the get-go. What do you think happens next here in the courtroom, Frank?
Well, they're right in the midst of trial. Day 5 concluded on Friday, and you're absolutely right. The FBI came in a show of force. The prosecutors came, more than 20 of them. And I think it was a signal to the judge, who I believe is entirely intimidated. She's not capable of conducting a fair trial, in my opinion. She's really should just take off her robe and join the prosecutors. She has repeatedly ruled in excluding evidence that any kind of fair presentation to the jury would have mandated she include. She made a number of what I believe are reversible errors. But they're going to go through, they may go through with this trial if better minds don't get together and dismiss this. And I'm sure the jury will acquit, and there will be another example of overreach by the Department of Justice, weaponized against some people who were just the victims of lies and a crooked FBI agent.
All right, you're listening to The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We'll be right back with investigative journalist Frank Pilato in just a minute.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show. Breaking news, folks. The Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, has announced that, quote, "I'm happy to report that we made substantial progress between the United States and China in our very important trade talks." This is being hailed as a breakthrough. The details to be released tomorrow. We have a framework for a trade deal with the Chinese. Now, Secretary of the Treasury Bessent was actually scheduled to be with us on the Roger Stone Show today. He was actually willing to call in by phone from Geneva, but I let him reschedule because I did not want to distract from his important duties. President Trump, I think, teed this up an hour ago, saying that he was about to make one of the most important issue announcements ever. I think he was referring to this breakthrough on trade. We will certainly bring you the details as we know them, but this is indeed very good news. I think Bessent could be the greatest Secretary of the Treasury since Alexander Hamilton. He's a brilliant outside-the-box thinker. He's a brilliant speaker, analyst, negotiator. He did extraordinarily well for his clients on Wall Street. Now he's doing very well for the American people. I think this is among President Trump's very, very best appointments. We return now to our conversation with Frank Pilato. He is the editor and publisher of Art Voice, an investigative journal, and we're talking about the One Taste trial currently going on in Brooklyn, where prosecutors allege a conspiracy to engage in forced labor, but not forced labor itself, an unheard of charge never before levied. Two women started a company. The feds decided to indict. Now they're in federal court facing 20 years. Frank Pilato writes, "The One Taste trial is an artifact of the scorched earth tactics of a government drunk on power. Our language is twisted, memory rewritten, and freedom rebranded as coercion." He writes, "It is not about a crime, it's about confusion, where consensual touch suddenly became a federal offense." Before the break, you pointed out that the judge in this case, Judge Diane, I'm going to say this right, Gujarati, has ruled for the government on every pretrial motion and every process motion in this case. Anytime you see a judge ruling solely for the government and never ruling for the defendant, you know the fix is in. It was true in my trial. It is true in this trial. Frank, you pick it up from there and tell us what's going on. The judge went out of her mind when the lawyers representing these two women charged asked that videos that had been excluded from the jury's site be preserved, obviously signaling that whatever happens in Brooklyn, there's going to be an appeal.
Well, you have to understand that Judge Gujarati, recently made a judge, was for 21 years a prosecutor in the Southern District. This is the Eastern District. This is a question of honor. The defense has challenged the integrity of the prosecution, the novelty of the charges, and the bizarre and criminal behavior of both prosecutors and, in particular, the FBI agent. It's almost like the blue line. This is a black line for this judge. She has to step forward and ensure that there's a conviction here to protect the corruption in the Department of Justice and the corruption in the FBI that happily Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are here to change.
We pray from your mouth to God's ear. It's amazing. If there are videos that would address this practice of one taste, why would the government not allow them to be seen by the jury? Why would they not be allowed to be presented as evidence? But more importantly, why would the judge lose her cool and start shouting when the defendant's lawyers simply asked that they be preserved? To me, this is an incredible smoking gun.
It is very much so. What the government wanted to get away with was out of context, selected clips spliced, not unlike a Netflix documentary from which this case came. And when Jennifer Bonjean, defense counsel for Nicole Daydon, stepped forward, she was aggressive. She said, the jury deserves to hear context. You can't just take a word here and a clip there and present that out of context. And the judge said, no, of course, because the context might show that these people were happy, that they were adults and that they consented. So she said it was excluded, and Jennifer Bonjean, the attorney, said, well, at least let's preserve these tapes on the record. The jury doesn't have to see them if that's how you rule, but we should at least have them there. That spelled appeal, and Judge Gujarati lost her mind.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can have forced labor, or in this case, not even forced labor, but conspiracy to commit forced labor or to force forced labor if there's no coercion. If people were free to leave, if people willfully decided to take part in this program, the government produces, based on everything I've read, no actual evidence of coercion or conscription, or that anybody was locked up or detained or beaten or bruised. I mean, it is this whole case seems to me to be a fabrication. And as you point out, the FBI actually colluding with producers at Netflix to create a documentary which becomes the basis for a subsequent indictment. While that may seem outrageous, frankly, the FBI did this all the way back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover, working with the tabloids to plant stories that would then become the basis for a prosecution. I want to thank our guest, Frank Parlato, investigative journalist. He has another big story. President Donald Trump actually posted last week pertaining to New York Attorney General Letitia James and allegations of the cover-up of sexual harassment by the Attorney General. That is a bombshell story. Frank, we're going to have you back on the show to talk about that. But in the meantime, I appreciate your tuning in today on the Roger Stone Show. We'll be back. We're going to talk about the New Jersey race for governor, one of only two races in the country coming up in 2026, which will be a major barometer for how the administration is doing. We'll be back with Mike Crispy from Mike Crispy Unafraid on Rumble.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. For those who don't know, I am a longtime veteran of New Jersey politics. I handled the Garden State in President Ronald Reagan's 1980 campaign, which he carried the state over Jimmy Carter. He also swept the delegates in New Jersey, much to the surprise of the Country Club Republican Bush wing of the party. I also worked there in 1978 to help Jeff Bell topple U.S. Senator Clifford Case in the Republican primary, only to unfortunately then lose the seat to Bill Bradley. In 1981, I was the chief strategist for Tom Kean, one of the greatest governors in New Jersey history, who won his uphill race in 1981 by 1,209 votes out of over 2 million cast. One of the most letter-perfect campaigns and a shot in the arm for the newly elected Reagan administration. Now, of course, New Jersey is one of two states that has its governorship on the ballot this coming November. Traditionally, how the party in power, the party in the White House is doing, how a new president is doing, is sometimes read by the results of these two bellwether elections. Here to talk about the election in New Jersey, our friend Mike Crispy. He is the host of Mike Crispy Unafraid on Rumble. Also has a late night show also now on Real America's Voice. Mike, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, always a pleasure. Great to be with you.
So we have an upcoming Republican primary. It seems to be increasingly raucous. Everybody, of course, trying to lay claim to being a Trump Republican. Trump is more popular in the Republican Party, not just the New Jersey Republican Party, but the Republican Party nationally than any president in my lifetime. That includes the incredibly popular Ronald Reagan. And the Trump imprimatur, or the perception of it, is very telling in a primary. But if there is a MAGA candidate, if there is a true Trump loyalist candidate in this race for governor, Mike, who is it?
Oh, Roger, it's a very fascinating primary. There are multiple candidates in this race. And, you know, there was a time where I was considering running myself because it was abundantly clear that there was no clear, true MAGA candidate. You know, Bill Spadia is trying to self-style himself in that image, but that's not true. He's somebody who endorsed Ron DeSantis in 2024, and after January 6th, called for President Trump to step down and resign, which is lunacy. So he's out. He's been trying to get the mantle. Jack Ciattarelli is in the race. He's never been a diehard MAGA candidate. And then John Bramnick, another candidate, has been actively against Trump the whole time. So the other candidate in the race, Mario Kranjak, North Jersey mayor of Englewood Cliffs, he is the truest MAGA candidate in the race, and people are wondering if he has enough time. He got into the race pretty late. He got in only a couple of months ago, so it's going to be a matter to see if he can, you know, mount the campaign to be competitive, but he's coming in late because there was no other true MAGA candidate in this race. It's definitely not Bill Spadia.
So New Jersey has public finance for its candidates and a matching fund program, but it also doesn't have something that it traditionally has had. That's a phenomenon known as the line. Now, this is a little tough to explain to people outside of politics, but basically it was the ability of the party bosses to give their candidates superior positioning on the ballot when you go into the voting place or when you get your ballot. And the official endorsed candidate of a given Republican county committee was traditionally thought to have a huge leg up. Now, candidates have won off the line. In 1981, one of the first things I did was to reach a negotiation with Brendan Byrne and the Democrats to do away with the line. Otherwise, Tom Kean, frankly, would never have been governor. The party bosses were going with Pat Kramer, the mayor of Patterson, who was their favorite. And of course, some counties at that point, like Morris, didn't have a line. Now, the courts have struck down the line, the superior ballot positioning for both Republicans and Democrats. And I think this is, generally speaking, a giant boost to insurgent MAGA America First candidates who are, unfortunately, rarely the candidate of the Chris Christie-dominated Republican establishment in New Jersey.
100%, Roger. And, you know, we've had a crazy system, again, totally different than every other state in the union, where somebody who wants to run for office isn't making an appeal in their primary to the voters. They're making their appeal to a small insider party boss crew. and their county committee people that influence where they are on the ballot. So there were candidates in this race, Bill Spady is an example of it, who are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to certain county party chairmen to try to buy the line. As you pointed out, the federal court struck that down in the middle of this race as a result of the 2024 election when it was originally challenged in court. So this is going to be the first primary in Republican politics in New Jersey since you were part of the last one that didn't have the line. First one in many, many years that will not have it. It's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out with the voters. I think it's going to be very fascinating, Roger. And then for years to come, New Jersey politics, they say, will never be the same.
It is interesting that you have these county conventions, county endorsement conventions. We didn't have those until 1981. Basically, in all honesty, strategically, I invented them because Tom Kean had run for governor in 1977, come in second in the Republican primary to State Senator Ray Bateman, had also run for Congress in 1974, losing the Republican primary to Millicent Fenwick. So although I thought Tom Kean was a strong potential candidate, he needed to win something to shake the loser reputation. This is kind of like Richard Nixon winning the New Hampshire primary in 1968 and then running the table on all subsequent primaries to dispel his reputation as a loser after losing by a whisker to John Kennedy and then losing the governorship of California. It's great to see the Middlesex County Convention, the Union County Convention, both of which were won by Tom Kean in a 9-person field, I might add, still around as substantial developments in the process. Mike, I want to talk about the Democrat side, but before we get there, there are rumors in Washington going around that former Senator Bob Menendez is quietly seeking a pardon from President Donald Trump. Now, I know and I like the interim U.S. Attorney Alina Habba in Newark, a very able lady. I cannot believe that she would support such a thing. It's important to note that Menendez was not just charged with corruption, with accepting gold bars as a bribe, but he was charged with sharing sensitive, non-public information about the number and nationalities of our security personnel serving at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, which was shared with Egyptian officials. According to his indictment, which was unsealed last September of 2023, in May of 2018, Menendez actually obtained the information from the State Department and texted it to his then-girlfriend, later his wife, who then in turn forwarded it to Wal Hanna, a New Jersey businessman, who then passed it on to Egyptian government officials. This is treasonous. I mean, first of all, he could easily have gotten someone killed. Clearly, what the Egyptians were looking for were the identities of our intelligence agencies. So Menendez's crimes are far more than just this venal taking of gold bars. And then there are also reports that the man who was accused in the indictment of bribing him, Fred Davies, also quietly seeking a pardon. I certainly hope this is something the president will not consider. I cannot believe that he will.
I mean, Roger, what Senator Bob Menendez did is absolutely, you hit the nail right on the head, treasonous. I mean, it wasn't just taking bribes, for kickbacks on legislation. This is literally that and 10 times worse. I mean, putting people who serve our country, who sign up for the mission to gather intelligence and keep us safe around the world, trading their safety and their livelihoods for these gold bars, that is a step even worse. So, I mean, this is one of the most disgraceful moments, I think, in the history of the U.S. Senate. And so I don't think anybody in this instance, Roger, should be getting a pardon. And I have a feeling that, both Alina Habba, who's doing a bang-up job right now, maintaining law and order in the state, I have a feeling that her, President Trump, everybody involved is not going to allow Menendez or anybody involved in Menendez's ilk to get any type of pardon. I think that that's not going to happen at all. I think that is fake news completely.
Yeah, I agree, but I have to report the rumor because, we tell you what we hear here on the ground. In the meantime, I noticed that Congressman Menendez's son, Senator Menendez's son, who is a congressman, one of the last products of the line, I might add, it was among those members of Congress storming the ICE facility in Newark, which seems to have turbocharged the Democrat gubernatorial prospects of Newark Mayor Ross Baccara. We're going to talk about the Democrat side when we come back because it is fascinating. Whether Republicans do have a chance to win in the Garden State next November will depend greatly on who the Democrats nominate. That appears to me to be an extraordinarily competitive race. Knowing how the mass media works, I think the mayor of Newark, Ross Baccara, just got a huge shot in the arm. Also, given the demographic makeup of New Jersey's Democratic primary becoming increasingly more progressive, I would not bet against the good mayor, although he's not thought at this juncture to be the front runner. We'll be back to talk about all of this and more with Mike Crispy. He's the host of Mike Crispy Unafraid on Rumble, also has a great late night show on Real America's Voice. Whatever you do, folks, don't touch that dial. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and we're bringing you the inside skinny on politics in the Garden State. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show. We're talking to Mike Crispy, the host of Mike Crispy Unafraid, also a great supporter of President Donald Trump, delegate to the 2024 convention, who addressed the president's historic rally in Wildwood, warming up the crowd for the president. Mike, over at the New Jersey Globe, that's at NewJerseyGlobe.com, David Wildstein reports that a poll commissioned by Republican gubernatorial candidate Jack Ciattarelli shows him with a 31-point lead over his closest opponent, radio personality Bill Spadea, 54-23. John Bramnick, who's running in the wrong party, a liberal Republican, if there is such a thing, was in third place at 10%, and former Engleworth Cliffs Mayor Mario Kranjak, who, as you point out, got in the race late at 2%. Now, it's important to note that this is a credible poll taken by a company called National Research. The firm's operated by a pollster, Adam Geller, who's done work for President Trump himself. It also reflects a sharp increase for Ciattarelli, who led earlier 43-18. Before that, he led 41-22 in two February polls, now vaulting to a more substantial lead. Is this reflective of how you see the race, Mike?
Yes, Roger. I mean, Bill Spadea, if he says the poll isn't right, where's his internal poll? His campaign has spent almost $1 million, and most of it has gone to consultants. You don't increase your voter share by paying the Chris Christie-aligned consultants. It's just not how it is. So, Bill Spadea might have people that, he's paying to boost himself online a little bit with social media influencers. But if you talk to anybody on the ground, Jack Ciattarelli does, in fact, have the name recognition from coming within 3 points last time in 2021. So if he's putting out a poll by a credible pollster that has himself up 31 and Spadea isn't responding with anything, no internal poll of his own, then I think that tells the tale. I mean, I think this is going to be a very, very wide margin when it's all said and done. Looking at the tea leaves right now between Ciattarelli and Spadea, and that's because Spadea wasn't authentically MAGA. He's been trying to sell that to people. It's going to shoot, his campaign in the foot because he went the whole way without addressing his lies about his flip-flopping on Trump.
Let's talk about the Democrat side, because I think the Republicans' prospects in November have a lot to do with who the Republicans choose. While I certainly don't support or endorse Newark Mayor Ross Baccara breaking into the ICE detention center, I do recognize its brilliance as a political stunt. If he's prepared to break the law and suffer the consequences, he has certainly gotten a bonanza of media coverage out of it. And given the growingly progressive nature of the Democrat primary, I wonder whether this is enough to score. The frontrunners are thought to be Congresswoman Mickey Sherrill from Morris County, also Mayor Fulop of Jersey City. How do you see that race shaping up?
Well, it's a pretty unbelievable primary because there's just so many candidates in the race. Mickey Sherrill and Josh Gottheimer both cannibalize each other's, moderate Democrat stances. Former Senate President Steve Sweeney has a stronghold in South Jersey, but the question is, will there be enough primary voters in South Jersey on the Democrat side to carry him through? I don't know about that. Then you have the progressives in the race, which you point out, Mayor Ross Baraka and Mayor Steve Fulop. You know, people say that Mayor Ross Baraka was initially in the race to take votes away from Fulop, who had announced his candidacy very early. He was coming out against the line and the Democrat establishment. He does have momentum in the urban areas. You know, people are reporting that his signs are out in places, in Hudson County and in Bergen County and stuff like that. So I believe that right now, for looking at the race, I think it's a jump ball. I think that Mayor Fulop and Cheryl were probably the front runners up until a couple of days ago, but Mayor Ross Baraka, I guess, is popular on the Democrat side to break the law and act like a thug, you know, storming the ICE facility with members of Congress on the Democrat side, who quite frankly should be expelled from Congress. There's a new video footage out there that the DHS released, I think today, of Representative LaMonica McIver assaulting a DHS official, pushing him as she's attempting to storm the facility, and that's against 18 U.S. Code 111. So I think Mike Johnson should be expelling her from Congress, quite frankly. But back to the primary on the Democrat side, I think right now it's still anybody's ball game. Conventional minds would have thought that Cheryl had the advantage because she was racking up endorsements, in the party boss apparatus. But I think that Fulop obviously has a lot of momentum going on because progressives are kind of latching on to that TDS Trump derangement syndrome message. They're getting fired up. But Baraka, you know, the papers in New Jersey are reporting it had to have helped him a little bit because now he is in lights all over the country in progressive circles. So he might have gotten a boost, which, you know what, I'm hoping he's the nominee. That'll be a great sign for the Republicans.
Yeah, the Democrat members of Congress are arguing that they have the right to go into the ICE facility because they have oversight authority. But when you research that, to have the oversight authority, they have to have the approval of the Oversight Committee, which none of them, of course, have. So this is acting out. I believe their actions are illegal. Be anxious to see what the interim U.S. attorney, what they choose to do, but grandstanding for politics, for absolutely sure. And it is these kind of cataclysmic events that grab media attention in an extremely volatile primary that could put the mayor of Newark into contention. It's interesting to watch the comeback attempt of Steve Sweeney. For those who don't remember, he was the all-powerful president of the state Senate when he was upset by a truck driver in an upset over the failed high tax and masking policies of the state of New Jersey. And he lost that powerful post. Now he's seeking to make a comeback. The problem for him, and he's a shrewd pal, is that there are not enough votes in the Philadelphia market in South Jersey to win without getting a significant share of votes in the North, and I don't believe that he can do that. So, but this does become a question of whose votes come from whom. I think if Fulop is to be the nominee, I think a lot of the traditional party bosses have a problem with that. And I think it would boost the chances of the Republican nominee, who I believe will most likely be Ciccarelli, who ran a surprisingly strong race last time, but I think that was, frankly, because members of the governor's staff blurted out that they would reinstate these harsh mandates surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. Anyway, we are out of time. I want to thank our guest, Mike Crispy. You can check him out over at Rumble. Also, where can we find you online, Mike?
Well, you guys can watch on our Real America's Voice TV, which is online and on your television, 8 o'clock p.m. on Saturday nights. Last Call with Mike Crispy. And you can follow me at Mike Crispy on X. Thanks for having me on, Roger.
Great to be with you, Mike. All right, thank you very much, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And for those who still have your mothers, cherish your mother. Cherish every minute with your mother, every second of their time with them on earth. God bless you. And for those who, like me, who are missing their mothers, God bless our mothers. They call me a mother sometimes, but I don't think that's what they mean.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.